Well, hello everyone. My name is Stephanie Iacino, the Director of Community Engagement, and today I am joined by Hava White, our Family Approval Coordinator, Betsy
Pareda.
totally blanking on last name. She assists Hava in family approvals, and Monica Avina, who also assists with the home study process and things like that. And today we're going to talk more about the process to become a foster parent and things like that. So if you guys have any questions, feel free to write it in the chat and we'll get to those periodically. So Hava, do you want to go ahead and tell us kind of the qualifications to become a resource parent?
Sure. So our basic qualifications to become a resource parent are that you have to be at least 18. You have to clear a background check, and that's for the applicants and any adults that live in the home. You just want to have, you can rent or own, so either of those options are fine. And you have to like kids. So those are your basic requirements. We do also need for our families to have some source of income without the foster care reimbursement. So just being able to financially support yourselves prior to the process. So those are our basic requirements.
Okay. Is there anything specific that would disqualify a family from being a resource parent?
There are some things. I mean, we're not looking for perfect families. That doesn't exist. So I think sometimes families think that if they have something in their background or in their life experience that they may have been through, that might preclude them. And really what we're looking for is for families that have learned from those experiences. So if they've had trauma or loss, maybe they've had a past that they aren't proud of, or whatever that is for them, where are they now? Have they overcome that? What have they learned from those experiences so that they can help kids who may have been in similar situations? But as far as things that are out of our hands, there are a few things as far as criminal background history that may preclude a family from being foster parents. And those are things like a history of child abuse, a history of domestic violence, murder, those types of things.
Okay. So how does someone become a resource family?
So I'll let Betsy talk about most of that.
Okay. So you will go on the website, Parents by Choice, go to foster care, and then there's a link. So you will sign up, create an account, and then I would give you a call. I would ask you some basic information, and then I will help you to sign up to the foster parent college once you watch the orientation. And then, just help you through the process.
And most of our process is online now, which is really nice, especially with everything that's been going on lately. So you can do your online orientation, you can start your application and all of the paperwork online through Binti, and a large portion of our training is also available online through the Foster Parent College. And we also have some internal training that we provide. So it's a blended training of online and in-person. Right now with COVID-19, the in-person portion of that training we've either done through Zoom or individually with families. So there are some accommodations for that right now. But most of the process is online through Binti and through those trainings. And then there is a couple of parts of the process after that. There's CPR first aid that families will do outside the agency with a provider of their choice. And then there's the home study process. And the home study process is, home study, home assessment, family assessment is basically a safe home study. And that is a process of, conversations with the family, with the social worker. Myself and Monica do those currently, and Betsy will do those in the fall. And there are conversations with families to talk about life history, personal experiences, any history of loss or trauma that applicants may have had in their lives. And like I was, saying, just what have you learned from those experiences? Where are you in that process of recovering? And the whole point of that process is to figure out what your strengths are and what those things are that you have that you're going to be really good at with working with our kiddos. And so that's a large part of the process. That's 3 visits with a social worker, and that last one is combined with your home inspection.
Okay. So you guys mentioned foster parent college. Can you explain that a little bit? Like, what is it? What does it do?
So foster parent college is it's an online training source that has contracted with the state of California to provide free training for resource families and social workers. So we do use a large portion of their training. I mentioned we have the blended, so we do have some individual training we provide that's agency specific. Foster Parent College is, their trainings are videos and interactive videos that are provided by professionals in the field. And there's subjects anywhere from child abuse and neglect to working with biological and primary families, trauma-informed care. So just a lot of information across the board, understanding the child welfare system, and just giving you a good basis of information for where to start.
Perfect. All right, no questions yet from the comment section. So during the process, you said that there's a home inspection. How can a family prepare for that?
We talk about that through the process, through the home visits. I mentioned that our social worker is there at least 3 times. So when we meet you guys in the home, we'll get a feel, we'll do a little walkthrough at the beginning, and it just gives us, it's not a home inspection at that point, it just gives us an idea of the layout of the home, where your foster children's bedroom may be, and kind of the layout and plan for that. And we'll be able to kind of help you guys with identifying if there's any issues that may come up prior to the home inspection. Some examples, maybe if you have a pool and you don't have a fence, or maybe you have pets but they're not immunized yet, or something like that. So we talk about how to prepare along the way. You also receive, that's part of that individual agency training that we provide, so we do talk in detail about how to get ready for that. And then you also have a copy of the home inspection. It's called a home health and safety assessment. And so you have a copy of that form during the process. And so there's no surprises. You know exactly what we're looking for. And, some things that we, besides safety features, making sure the home is clean and uncluttered and things like that, we're also wanting you to make sure you have first aid kits and fire extinguishers and, things like that.
Okay. So you talked a little bit about the home assessment, the home study. Can you explain that process just a little bit?
So again, it's just 3 visits with a social worker, and right now in our Stockton office, that's me and Monica, and eventually that will also be Betsy. We're SAFE trained, so that is, I can't tell you exactly what that stands for at the moment, because I knew Steph would ask me. I think it's Structured Analysis Family Evaluation. Yes. And basically, it's standardized. So it's a program that we're trained in to help us with interviewing families and talking and evaluating what those strengths are for families in their history. Understanding that we've all been through trauma and loss in some way in our lives, and so being able to talk with families about those situations, help them figure out what their strengths are and what those things are that they're really good at, so that we can help tailor that to best matching children for their family.
Okay. Nothing else from the chat yet. I'm sure we're going to have a bunch of questions soon. So all families are required to get their fingerprints and complete a CPR first aid. Are there costs associated with that since it's not within Parents by Choice?
Yes. So your fingerprinting, it ranges from $80 to $95 depending on where you go, and that's per person. And CPR first aid is a big range, anywhere from $30 to $150. Parents by Choice does reimburse our families, the applicants, for both of those costs once you're approved and you have your first child in the home.
Okay. Are there any other things that families have to pay for before they're approved?
Yeah, so that's one of the reasons why families need to have some financial stability prior to approval, is that there are costs involved in getting your home ready for kiddos. So, you might need to buy beds and car seats, bedding, toys, just anything in the home like your fire extinguishers and first aid kits, locks for your medication cabinets and things like that. So, it varies for every family depending on what you already have available or what you need to get. But definitely there are some of those upfront costs. And then when you have your first child placed in the home, it's roughly about a month before you do receive your first reimbursement. So again, the upfront costs there would be, food and transportation costs and things like that.
Okay. And are any of those costs reimbursed?
Those costs to prepare for getting your home ready for inspection or for that child being placed in the home are the family's costs. But once you are approved, then that's what that foster care reimbursement is there to help with. So if you have any additional costs, for food and transportation and those other things involved in caring for your children, that monthly foster parent reimbursement is there to help with that.
Okay. So Parents by Choice serves both Stanislaus and San Joaquin County. Are there any specific areas that we are targeting to recruit families? Any areas that we don't recruit families from?
Well, we do, we're in the Central Valley, so our offices are in Stanislaus and San Joaquin, so those are our primary areas of recruiting. But we do serve children from lots of other counties in our area. But as far as families and where they live and their approval, we have families, we're looking to recruit more families closer to the Sacramento area. We have families currently as far south as Newman, Tuolumne County, Calaveras County. We're open to those surrounding areas. We just want to make sure that we are, not having a family too far away that we wouldn't be able to support them if there were a situation that needed that. So I think we wouldn't want to go any farther than an hour and 45 minutes. And so as long as the family's within that range for us, we'd be willing to consider that.
Okay. Chat's quiet today. So how long does the process normally take?
Well, it largely depends on the applicants. If we have a family that's really motivated, you could have a family that's ready to go on a Saturday when the office is closed, and they can, jump on our website and get the link to Binti and watch their orientation and start their paperwork and that huge part of the process in quick time. And getting signed up for your foster parent trainings, again, that's self-paced, so as quickly as you choose to get through those classes, that makes the process quicker. Your home study process generally takes about 3 weeks to complete that. And so realistically the average for families is around 2 to 3 months, but you could be done as quickly as 4 weeks if we really had a motivated family.
Okay. So Cartina just asked, how long does the whole process take?
Cartina, that's an unusual name. That might be my auntie. So what was the question again? Sorry.
It was just, how long does the whole process take?
Right. So again, it's just based on your motivation. So as quickly as you move, we're going to keep that pace with you. But you do need to complete your application within a year. So from the date of application, you have a year to complete that process.
So I know that fingerprints can take a little bit longer for some people. How long would that take?
Good question. So fingerprinting, if there's nothing in the criminal history, or if it's something that was a long time ago, maybe something that wasn't a pattern of criminal history, for example. There's something called a simplified exemption. So for families that don't have any history or don't have a lot of history in their background, a fingerprint process can come through with approval within 24, 48 hours. So that's pretty quick. If there is something in the criminal history that's more recent, or if there's a lengthy criminal history, or something that was more severe, then there may be a longer process where the applicant would have to file for the exemption. It wouldn't be granted automatically. And that process can take up to 75 days. So it does extend the process because the state has to provide that approval and they have to review all of that information. So that could push the process back several months.
Okay. Debbie asks if there's anything that would prevent me from becoming a resource parent.
Well, that's a very open question. Thank you, Debbie. Well, without being too specific, there are certain things, like I mentioned, in a criminal history that would prevent a family from being approved. So serious things like convictions of child abuse or convictions of domestic violence. A history, even if there's not a conviction, but a history of allegations or arrests for spousal abuse or restraining orders or things like that. So at the end of the day, we're just looking to make sure that our kids will be safe. And so we do our best in those family assessments to evaluate that. And I mentioned we're not looking for perfect families. We are working within the state guidelines as far as what they say as far as criminal history goes. So as long as a applicant clears the criminal record history, we'll still review that if there's a lengthy history or if it's very recent. But again, we're looking for where that family is in their process, and if we can document or show things that can show that they have overcome those issues, or that they are not living in the same way that they were before, if that makes sense. But other than that, specific things with the home, like I mentioned, if you have a pool but you don't have a fence, that we run into that sometimes with families who are renting, and they're renting a home that has a pool but there's not a fence, and a fence can be kind of pricey to put up, and not all landlords are willing to do that for renters. So that's a common preclusion for families. Another one might be if there's just not enough capacity. If we have a family that's interested in caring for kids of a certain age, we do have quite a few families who are interested in caring for infants or toddlers, and we all love infants and toddlers, but we just don't have a huge need for families to fill that role, because one, infants and toddlers are easy to place. Family members are often easier to step up and help biological family if there's an infant that needs a home. And so they might not even get to the foster care system or into foster care. And so, we're really looking for families to help us with where the need is. And that is for kids that are, school-aged. Often we have children who are siblings. So we may have families who want to work with a child that's in a certain age range, but they may come with a sibling that's older or younger than that. So really, through the process, talking with families, again, about their strengths and those things that they're good at, I think one of those things that families kind of limit themselves on is if they haven't parented a child of that age yet, they might feel like they're not ready for that. And we understand that. But through the process, a lot of families realize, hey, I actually have a nephew that I watch every weekend, or I, volunteer every summer in a church camp, or whatever that is. So sometimes families have a lot more strengths than they realize they do, and it's just through those conversations and figuring out what those are, and helping them to feel comfortable with starting in a place that will serve the needs of kids that we have. So those are some things. Sometimes we'll refer parents that want to adopt only and aren't ready for foster to adopt, because that's what we do at Parents by Choice. Is we provide foster care services, and we do finalize adoptions for our families, but our primary goal is reunification. So if families are only looking to adopt and don't want to foster to adopt, then we might refer elsewhere.
Okay. All right, so Cartina asks, if you've been fingerprinted before, do we need to do it again?
Good question. If you've been fingerprinted with Parents by Choice, and let's say, for example, you fingerprinted last year, you started the process with us, and for some reason something happened and you needed to put that on hold. If you let us know that, we may keep your prints associated with us, and then if you come back next year and want to reapply, you wouldn't have to re-fingerprint because you're already cleared with the agency. We haven't discontinued that association. But let's say you were approved with us or certified with us a few years ago, and you withdrew your approval, or you closed your, you decided you didn't want to be foster parents anymore, and then now you're coming back and you want to do that again, you would need to re-fingerprint, yes.
Okay. So Debbie asks, can I adopt once I'm approved?
Thank you, Debbie. Forgot about that part. So with Resource Family approval, the nice thing about that is they have taken all of those processes that they used to have for, foster care. You'd have to go through this whole process. If you wanted to adopt, you'd have to do this whole process over again. If you wanted to take care of, a grandchild, for example, that was in the foster care system, you would have a different set of requirements for that. And with RFA, Resource Family Approval, you're approved for all of those. So if you're approved as a resource parent, whether it's with Parents by Choice or with the county or whatever that is, if you have approval, you are qualified to provide foster care, to adopt, to provide kinship care, which is caring for a family member, and guardianship. So all of those things are kind of one and done with Resource Family Approval, and you wouldn't have to redo that process over again if you decided you wanted to take in a grandchild, or if you wanted to adopt one of your foster children.
Okay.
Good question.
And then Cartina asks, how long do you have to foster before you can adopt?
Well, that's a question for Debbie. But it's generally 6 months, so it needs to be a significant amount of time. So the county and the agency want a child to be adjusted with the family, and the family adjusted with the child. Depending on where that child's case plan is when they come into your home, really depends on that length also. So, they could be in reunification when they're first placed with you, and it could be 2 years before that reunification process is completed and that child, if they're not able to reunify, goes up for adoption. So the answer to that is it could be any length of time, but generally it's 6 months. So if you have a child that's placed today that needs what we call a concurrent home, so it's a family that's open to adoption, then it would generally be 6 months before anything could be finalized. I hope that's right, Debbie.
If not, you guys can always check out our adoption discussion that we had a couple weeks ago. It's on our Facebook page. It's also on our YouTube page, so you can check out that video as well for more information about adoption. And then Cartina asks, do all foster kids have visits with their biological parents?
Good question. Not all. Again, that just depends on where they are in their case plan. So if the family is still working on reunification, then there's going to be contact with the family. And again, that varies. It could be once a week, it could be several times a week. It just really depends on what the courts decide for that. And then you also have children who may have been in the foster care system for a while, who may be in long-term foster care. They weren't able to reunify, and there's not a family right now that is able to adopt. And so in those cases, they may not have family visits, or it may be more sporadic. So maybe they see a grandparent once a month, or they see their siblings on some sort of schedule. So it's family visits aren't always with their biological parents. Sometimes it is with siblings if they're not placed together, or with extended family that's important to the kiddos.
So this question goes to Betsy. Um, so a family's gone to our website. They've clicked the button on to become a resource parent. So they do their whole thing. They sign up on Binti, do their orientation and everything. Then what happens?
Yeah, so then I will give you a call and I would just get some basic information, as in what's your occupation, and then where do you live, and then the other adults living in the home, and then if you have a pool or if you have pets, and then also what are you considering to foster, what ages and gender. And then I just ask a few background information about your record, and then why you want to adopt or foster. And then so then after that, once you have watched the orientation on Binti, I will sign you up on Foster Parent College, where you could begin the clusters to the courses.
So Monica, I gotta include you guys. You're sitting on the couch. So Monica, you do more of the home assessment stuff. What types of questions can a family expect from that process?
So the type of questions can be, so we just want to know if there's any trauma that you've been through. We want to make sure we can best represent you in that report, so you can, see some strengths that you can help our children with. Some questions can be as simple as, tell me more about your environment when you were a child. Tell me more about the relationship with your parents, with your siblings. Also can be anywhere, like, where high school did you graduate from? Can you tell me your work experience? So those are some of the basic questions that we ask. So basically it takes you from your childhood to where you're at now. And we just want to see, how your life has been and how we can best represent you.
And lifestyle, talking about what you like to do as a family, what weekends look like, what your work schedules or your weekly schedules look like. So there's logistics that go in there too, making sure that, for example, if a family has two parents that work full-time, then we may look to evaluate placing a school-age child in that home that's in school while they're working, talking about childcare options, if they need childcare, who is providing that, and who can help with alternative care if possible. So there's a lot of talk that goes into those conversations, not just your childhood history and trauma and all that stuff like Monica mentioned, which is a huge part, but also just everyday life today and what that looks like for a family.
All right, so we talked a little bit about working full-time as a resource parent.
Yes.
So if both parents are working full-time, you suggest that they take a school-aged versus like a toddler?
Yeah, I mean, there's always case-by-case situations. An example of that would be if we have a family that is able to take in a sibling set of different ages. So if you have an infant, but you also have a 16-year-old, sometimes that's hard to find a family for that is open or able to care for both of those age ranges. And so there is childcare. There's a bridge program through the county that's available for childcare options for our working families. There's also, we talk to families about, who in your own support network might be able to help you with childcare, whether that's on a regular basis or occasionally. So there definitely is a plan in place for all families, not just working families. And we do help with trying to look at options in the community for helping with that as well. But the cost for childcare, if it's, your childcare that you're arranging for your children, that is out of our foster parents' pocket. But if it's a situation where it's respite and an approved parent needs, someone to watch their foster children for a weekend, they have a work event they need to go to or something like that, we may have another foster family within the agency that can provide respite, and then we coordinate the reimbursement adjustment for those two families. So there's childcare options available. We're not saying childcare is not possible. It is. It's just that if we have a family that works full time, we generally wouldn't place an infant in that home where they would be in childcare full time.
So Elisa asks, if married, do both need to be approved to be a resource parent?
Great question. So usually yes. The reason for that is because if you're married, even if you're in a committed relationship, you don't have to be married to be foster parents, but if you're in a committed relationship, every family dynamic is different, and so we're assessing each family dynamic to see what your lifestyle is, what your schedules are like, how you work out your own family unit. And sometimes we have another parent that is outside the home a lot. Maybe they're a truck driver or a pilot and they're gone for lengths of time. And so in those situations, we may approve a primary parent, and then the other parent would be what we call an alternative caregiver. So they wouldn't be approved as a foster parent, but they would be approved as a caregiver for that child. And there's differences in some of the training requirements for that. So those are some examples where we may only approve one of the parents. But generally, in situations where both parents are going to be there and involved on a regular basis, it doesn't make sense to only have one approved, because the other parent would also probably be involved in disciplining and family decisions, transportation, and those sorts of things. So just kind of talking to the family about why one family may not want to be, or one family member may not want to be approved. That may be a source of further discussion. Maybe that other parent's not quite on board with fostering right now. Or maybe one parent's just, we know everyone's family is different. There could be one parent that does everything. But when you really start talking about, how their family unit works, it may look on the surface like one parent does most of the work, but the other parent does do a lot of background communication and spends time with the children and lots of other things that might not look so overtly involved. And so we really just want to make sure that we're empowering both parents and that we're figuring out a way that works for your family unit. But the other thing to consider too with only approving one parent in a couple relationship is that if you do get to the point that you want to potentially adopt a child, it's really best that you both be approved. So otherwise, only one parent could legally adopt that child. So those are just some things to consider.
Okay. So Elisa also asks, how many foster children can share a room, and can they share a bedroom with my child?
Yes, so the regulations or the standards say that we can have up to 4 children share a room together. That's not general practice for us. We usually try to keep it around 2, maybe 3. But if the room is large enough and maybe a family has 2 bunk beds, for example, or something like that, then it's possible to have up to 4 children. Yes, your children can share with your foster children, and siblings can share rooms together regardless of their gender, but there are age requirements for opposite genders to share. So if you have kiddos that are under the age of 8, then both genders, boys and girls, can share a room together. But if over the age of 8, you would have to have same gender or siblings share those rooms.
And then Cartina asks, when we become a foster parent, are we allowed to take them out of town, for example, camping?
So that's a very common question. And yeah, we want our kids to have fun. We want them to have real life and feel like they are absolutely members of your family. And all of those experiences make that happen. So, the county likes to know where their kids are. So if you're, let's say you wake up on a Saturday morning and spur of the moment, you want to go on a camping trip. That was the question. As long as it doesn't impact a family visit that's scheduled during that time, then generally you're letting your agency social worker here with Parents by Choice know what your plans are. So, you can send a text or an email or a phone message to your social worker just saying, hey, we're going to be camping up in Sonora this weekend, and this is where we're going to be. This is how you can get a hold of us. And, the times and dates that you're going to be gone. If you're going to be going on a lengthier trip, let's say a Disneyland trip or someplace a little bit farther away within the state, we want to know about that ahead of time, and we'll run that by the county, because the county also wants to be involved in that plan and kind of know where, like I said, where the kids are going to be. But if you have things that impact a family visit, then absolutely it has to be approved first. So if you want to make that Disneyland trip, but on that Thursday of that week there's a scheduled visit with their parents, we have to get approval first before that can happen. And that's easy to do. That's usually just an email or a phone call to the county social worker. They communicate that with the family, and approval is usually able to happen pretty quickly. We've had kids go out of state with families on vacations, and in those situations we do need prior permission. There's a court order, an ex parte that needs to happen for that, and so we need a little bit more time for planning, but it's definitely possible. We can have kids go out of country, but there's more things involved with that. There's passports and parental permission and all that comes into play too. So again, much lengthier process. There's more cost involved with that for passports and those things which would fall on the foster family. But our agency is there to help walk you through those. So if, we've had children go out of state for family reunions or get-togethers or family vacations, and that definitely can happen. We just have to have a plan in place and get that prior permission.
And then Patty asks, do I need to be married in order to be a resource parent?
Nope. We have single parents. We have applicants that are in committed relationships, but they're not married. There's no length of time that designates a committed relationship. We're just looking, again, that's part of that family assessment process, is just identifying the commitment of the relationship and the stability of the relationship.
So we talked a little bit about the financial assistance that's available with being a resource parent. Can you elaborate a little bit more on that? Like, how does it work?
So again, with that, there's no specific number. There's no annual salary that a family needs to make in order to be foster parents. We're looking at your current finances and what those bills are, what those expenses are that you have on a monthly and yearly basis, and what your income is. And so the income, it doesn't have to be from a job. It can be SSI. It can be, maybe you have a large sum of money that you inherited and you can document that you have that, whatever that is. But it just needs to be documented, and we just evaluate what your income is and what your expenses are, and make sure that there's a comfortable balance there so that you're able to financially support yourselves.
So children come into foster care is there medical coverage for them, or would a foster parent have to provide the medical coverage?
Yeah, so most of our kids are covered through Medi-Cal. So every child that comes in, there may be a small percentage that have private insurance, but our children have medical coverage through the state. And so once a child gets into foster care and their Medi-Cal is processed, then their regular and usual dental, medical, mental health needs, all of those are met through Medi-Cal. Sometimes the family may, I mentioned that, it kind of, once that's established, so it takes a little while, within that first couple of weeks to get that set up for a family or for a child if it's their first time in placement. So if there's an emergency and a family has to take a child to the ER or something like that, they may get a bill for that. But again, that bill goes to Medi-Cal, so a family wouldn't be responsible for that.
Okay. So do foster parents or resource parents have a choice in which children are placed in their home?
Yep, we'll never make a family take a child into their home or their family. Again, it's the huge part of that pre-approval process that families go through is identifying their strengths and figuring out where a good place to start is for placements. So there shouldn't be too many surprises, as far as phone calls when we call families for children that need homes. But sometimes, if we have a family that says they're interested in caring for kids between 5 and 14, and we have a sibling set that needs a home and they're 7 and 17, we may still call that family. Most families are more open to getting all of those phone calls and being able to evaluate those decisions rather than not getting called. More often than not, families are more flexible and willing to kind of look outside of those parameters. We also try to, I think we talked about this in our placement Facebook Live, but we also try as hard as we can to be able to support that initial placement. So if we can, we may try to arrange a pre-placement visit with a child so that a family can meet them first. In our experience, sometimes it's when you have an actual child that you're able to see and meet, you realize that that child is a person and that they need a loving family and they need someone to care for them. And it's a lot different than looking at a piece of paper where you say, yes, I'll be open to a 9-year-old, but then you have a 12-year-old that needs a home that's not 9. And when you have a chance to really think about that or to meet that child, you realize the age doesn't generally matter so much. It's the fact that this child needs a good, loving family. So we try to help families with that process as much as we can, just to help ease them into that, at least for their first few.
Okay. Okay, nothing yet. So, do we have families that only speak Spanish?
We do. We have some families, most of our families that are Spanish speaking are able to speak or understand English in some way, but we do have Spanish speaking social workers, and Betsy and Monica both speak Spanish, so the initial part of the process, if a family feels more comfortable talking in, communicating in Spanish, they're able to do that throughout the process. And throughout the home study process as well. And then once they're approved, we also have Spanish-speaking social workers, so families will be able to continue working with someone that is able to communicate.
There's nothing else there? Okay. You have anything that you would like to conclude with, or either of you ladies? So quiet over there.
I think for me, for families that are watching that are considering doing foster care, it's a lengthy process. Sometimes there's a lot of paperwork involved. It can feel like the process is never ending, and there are a lot of requirements and things that you need to turn in and boxes to check and that sort of a thing. But we promise once you get through that, and hopefully through that process, our goal is to support you. We want families to know they're not alone. When you have children in the home, you're not just left to yourselves and trying to wing it and figure it out. We try to do our best to make sure that we're there to support you throughout the entire process. Our social workers are here to support you, to build you up, to empower you, so that you are the ones that feel confident in parenting your child. So, we are learning a lot from our families. A lot of the things that our social workers do in helping to suggest through situations are things other families have told us they've used or tried and that have worked. So it's really important to listen to each other, and not to be too intimidated. If this is your first go at fostering, you're an expert in your own life, and you're an expert in parenting your own children. So those things that you're good at and that you're strong at, we want to build on. And we're not trying to mold you into a specific box. Every family's different. Every family's lifestyle is different. And we want to make sure that whatever that is that's working, that we help match a child into that home, that you'll be able to incorporate their traditions and some of their things that they're used to, and also helping them to integrate into some of those things that your family does as well. So all of that pre-process and all of that paperwork, that's what that's all for.
Oh, we have one more thing. Oh, couple of things. Okay. So Cartina says, I also take care of my 4-year-old grandson who's autistic. Would that be an issue to foster? Are the kids with disabilities as well to foster?
So again, we're just looking to see, sometimes families might be already, working with children in the home or caring for grandchildren, and those children would be counted in capacity. So maybe they don't live in the home, but they're in the home on a regular basis. They spend the night several nights a week. So we would count those children as children that live in the home as far as your capacity goes. I guess we didn't really talk about that you can have up to 6 children total in a home. So that means that includes any children that currently live in the home, plus your foster children. And so in that situation with Cartina, her grandchild would be counted in that capacity. And if she's working with a child that already that has autism, then those are skills. Those are strengths that a family has. Those are resources that a family is familiar with in their community. So if they, feel as though they're in a place that they could also help another child that may be autistic or have developmental delays, then absolutely that would be a family that has some skills already that we would be able to place a child and match them with a family that can work with that.
Okay. All right. So, Betsy, Monica, do you have any last words you want to say?
Just start the beginning process of becoming a foster parent, because it might be scary, but it's not that scary.
There's a lot of support.
Yes.
There is a lot of support, and don't feel like when you click to start the application that means you're stuck and you have to do it, because it's a process. There's many steps that go into that. There's training, so when you go through the training, that helps you with your decision, understanding that our kiddos come from homes where they've been abused or neglected often, and so there may be behaviors associated with that because of the trauma that they've been through. And so the training is there to help you understand where those come from and to help you work on how you can help kids understand their own trauma and their behaviors, so that we don't see those behaviors we don't want to see as often. And we do have some families that go through the training and realize it may be not the right time in their family's life. Maybe they've got a lot going on already, or maybe they are caring for other children that have special needs, and adding a child to foster care may be a little bit too much. So sometimes families opt themselves out after they learn a little bit more about the process, and that's okay too. So just starting the process doesn't mean you have to finish, if that makes sense.
All right, perfect. All right, so Cartina says, thank you, ladies. This was very enlightening. And Patty says, thank you for all of the information.
You're welcome.
Thank you, ladies, for joining me today. If you guys want to learn more about becoming a foster parent or a resource parent, you can go to our website, www.parentsbychoice.net/programs/foster-care. And if you're ready to make that decision, just click the button on that page and start the application process. I'll be on again next Tuesday at 3 o'clock, and I'll be joined by Amanda, and we'll be talking more about her specialty in the mental health program. She has more of a holistic view on therapy, and so we'll dive into that a little bit. So thank you, ladies, again for joining me, and we'll see you guys on Tuesday.